Well, my mom, I wish I got great advice from her, but I don't know how she does it because she perfectly balances that. She's our best buddy. We love her so much. She's the person that we call like your best friend when something goes wrong or when something goes right. But yet there's always still that respect. She's always still our mom. It's not just like we're just completely girlfriends.
Hi besties, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball, and today I have something wild to share. So, Perez Hilton recently came across an interview between Megan Twohey of the New York Times and NPR's All Things Considered, and I'm still shocked by the details. I don't know if Perez found it himself or if someone sent it to him, but many of us missed it and that's a big deal. This conversation between Megan and Blake Lively sheds light on a part of the story that hasn't gotten enough attention, even though Justin Baldoni's defamation case was dismissed. This interview digs into something even more concerning, a potential smear campaign now. What's fascinating is that this interview wasn't really about Justin's alleged misconduct on set, or the serious sexual harassment claims that led to his downfall, loss of representation from WME, and the rescinding of a major award. Instead, it dives into the digital warfare and manipulation behind the scenes. Megan talks about a conversation she had with Blake Lively, where Blake reportedly downplayed what happened on set, saying, "It wasn't even that bad." If that's true, then why the lawsuit? Why the outrage? That's where things start to feel off. It's Blake Lively we're talking about, and from what we've seen, the entire situation seems skewed. At this point, Blake's claims appear weak, even frivolous, and it's starting to look like she might be the one orchestrating a smear campaign. Things on Reddit have also taken a strange turn. A subreddit was allegedly hijacked by bots linked to Stephanie Jones, possibly orchestrated by sympathizers of Blake and Ryan Reynolds shortly after Justin's case was dismissed. Suddenly, public opinion began shifting in their favor. It's ironic because Blake accused Justin of leading a smear campaign. Yet now it looks like the opposite is happening. Back to the interview. Megan referenced text messages and emails obtained through a subpoena, which allegedly wasn't even real. The New York Times may have published all of this without verifying the source properly. Either Blake misled them, or the Times was just careless. Either way, it looks bad. Megan describes the supposed smear campaign in detail, how Justin and his team hired a crisis PR manager, Melissa Nathan, to repair his image. But Megan's language sounds more like she's reporting facts than possibilities, which is troubling from a journalist who's supposed to stay neutral. What's worse is that the PR campaign she describes was actually pretty passive. They didn't start Reddit threads or spread new rumors, they just engaged with negative comments to shift the tone. Meanwhile, we now know that Blake's side, especially Leslie Sloan, was actively leaking false stories to major outlets like TMZ, West Weekly, and Page Six to destroy Justin's reputation. And sadly, the judge didn't let Justin go through discovery, meaning he couldn't present the full scope of evidence that could have proven malice. That dismissal with prejudice might have closed the legal door, but it didn't close the door on what really happened, and we're still watching. It really frustrates me that the conclusion was no malice took place, because to anyone observing this situation closely, it's clear that there was not only malice, there still is malice. The narrative continues to be shaped unfairly. And what's worse is that Justin Baldoni, someone who's been known to advocate for women, has been left to navigate the fallout of a campaign seemingly built to destroy him. Meanwhile, it's being spun as though Blake Lively is the only one who suffered reputational damage. But Megan Twohey, in her article, barely acknowledges why Blake was even getting negative attention to begin with. She never asks why the public was turning on Blake, she just presents it as though it was an orchestrated attack, without ever considering whether some of the criticism was actually warranted or organic. One of the most egregious errors in Megan's reporting was linking a 2016 interview with Shasti Flaw as part of the supposed smear campaign. She implied Shasti had ties to Melissa Nathan, a PR figure associated with Baldoni's team. She never even reached out to Shasti for comment or clarification. That's basic journalistic protocol. Verify the connection before making the claim, but Megan didn't. Instead, she seemed more fascinated by the idea that this was all part of a new digital playbook, one that manipulates public perception of celebrities. Yet ironically, she never questions if Blake and Ryan themselves were using that exact strategy. As a journalist, you're supposed to question sources, evaluate their motives, and compare their claims against verified facts. You need to ask, are they bitter, vengeful, seeking attention, or maybe even financial gain? Megan's article leaned heavily on Blake's legal complaint without offering substantial space to Baldoni's side, or even waiting for evidence. And this article wasn't just quietly posted, it came with a tone of triumph, even glee, about the fact that Baldoni was dropped by WME and lost a major award. The lack of objectivity here is staggering. During her interview with Ari Shapiro, Megan highlights how Blake claimed the experience on set wasn't even the worst she'd faced in Hollywood. Blake herself told Megan that she had seen far worse misconduct before, but that she decided to speak up this time to get protection. Yet what followed the backlash? The public discourse. The narrative turning felt far more sinister to her than the alleged misconduct itself. That's deeply ironic. She wasn't upset about the actions on set as much as she was about how people reacted to her. That's where her victim stance comes from, not from the actual experiences during filming, but from the public response afterward. Even more shocking, Megan quotes messages between Melissa Nathan and another publicist, where they allegedly celebrated how the online conversation was shifting and how much backlash Blake was facing. Megan sees this as proof that people love to hate women, but what about the context? What about the backlash stemming from Blake's own public behavior? She was promoting alcohol during interviews for a film centered on domestic violence. She created themed drinks for the premiere, one named after the abuser character, Ryu Wait, while Justin Baldoni was reportedly left in a basement, unable to attend the event Wayfair had sponsored. Blake's flippant remarks during press tours, like joking about people tracking her by GPS when asked about connecting with abuse victims, angered the public, especially readers of Colleen Hoover's book. These weren't PR stunts by Justin's team. They were natural responses from a passionate audience, and yet Megan and others painted it as a deliberate campaign by Baldoni's camp. This entire saga demonstrates the importance of fair, balanced reporting. One-sided narratives can ruin reputations, distort the truth, and deny the public real insight into what's happening. Journalism should strive for clarity and fairness, not narratives shaped by celebrity, status, and surface-level complaints. One of the most telling parts of this entire controversy revolves around the organized efforts surrounding the social media for the film It Ends With Us. Within the massive Facebook group dedicated to the film, boasting over 200,000 followers, members engaged in intense conversations expressing outrage and frustration. According to available information, Melissa, Nathan, and Janelle were directly involved in posting and managing content across the film's official social media channels, including Instagram, Facebook, and possibly TikTok. Their goal appeared to be amplifying the voices of survivors, encouraging conversations about the film's themes, and promoting the project itself. On the surface, this seems like standard marketing, but the timing and tone raised eyebrows, especially as backlash grew stronger. Parallel to this promotional effort was a growing storm in the press. While Nathan and others were boosting social media engagement, media outlets and women's organizations were publishing scathing critiques of Blake Lively. Many accused her of treating the topic of domestic violence too lightly. Several domestic violence shelters even released public statements criticizing the film for romanticizing abuse and portraying a dangerously inaccurate depiction of trauma. The character of Ryle, who is at the center of this debate, was a focal point of concern, and while Colleen Hoover, the author of the original book, holds responsibility for the storyline, the criticism fell heavily on Blake as the film's star and co-producer. Soon, tabloid headlines became saturated with negative portrayals of Justin Baldoni. Articles accused him of being controlling, sexist, and emotionally abusive on set. He was painted as the villain who allegedly silenced Blake's voice and resisted her creative input. The public narrative shifted so rapidly that by the time Justin's PR team could respond, the damage had already begun. Importantly, this media wave began before Melissa Nathan was even hired and before Jed joined the team, making it clear that the backlash was not artificially planted by Justin's side, but already circulating. When Justin's team did respond, their tone remained respectful. Justin consistently spoke positively about Blake, credited her creative contributions, and emphasized her influence on the final cut. The conflict, at its core, appeared to be a clash of artistic visions, two cuts of the film, two different perspectives, but the media chose to spin it into a scandal about power and abuse. Even more troubling, sources outside Justin's camp, crew members and production insiders, spoke anonymously to outlets like TMZ and The Hollywood Reporter. They described Blake as disengaged, frequently isolated in her trailer, and sometimes difficult to work with. Still, there was no coordinated smear campaign from Justin's team, no attacks, no public retaliation. Meanwhile, Blake's team's publicist Leslie Sloan allegedly orchestrated an aggressive smear campaign against Justin. She reportedly funneled negative stories to tabloid outlets, shaping public opinion. If Justin responded to these attacks through his own publicist, was that retaliation, or was it simply defending himself? Retaliation suggests power imbalance, consequences delivered in response to a formal complaint. But in this case, Blake made no formal sexual harassment complaint in the beginning. In fact, even in her Van Zandt Inc. lawsuit, there was no mention of only concerns about confidential information being leaked. So what exactly is Blake claiming retaliation for? Public backlash to her own behavior. Revelations that there were creative conflicts on set. Disagreements over the film's direction. That's not retaliation. That's public accountability. If people discovered she had significant control over the project and yet refused to acknowledge its sensitive themes while promoting it with flippant jokes and branded alcohol, then criticism is fair. The fact that her team now controls a once neutral subreddit, it ends with lawsuits, only adds to the suspicion. Moderators were allegedly kicked out and replaced, and now, any dissenting voice is labeled misogynistic or anti-feminist. This isn't advocacy for women, it's narrative control? And that's not justice. One of the most revealing aspects of the entire controversy surrounding It Ends With Us lies in the deliberate and highly organized digital efforts tied to the film's social media presence. A large Facebook group with over 200,000 members served as a central hub for conversations surrounding the film, initially built to promote the project and foster excitement among fans. The group quickly turned into a heated battleground of opinions. Many fans expressed outrage, frustration, and deep concern over the direction the film was taking. Reports indicate that Melissa, Nathan, and Janelle played key roles in managing the film's digital presence, posting content across Instagram, Facebook, and possibly TikTok. While their stated objective was to uplift survivors' voices and engage in meaningful dialogue about domestic abuse, the timing and tone of their posts became increasingly questionable. As the backlash intensified, the online strategy seemed less about healing and more about defending the brand at any cost. At the same time that Nathan's team pushed out feel-good survivor content, Blake Lively was facing mounting criticism from media outlets, women's advocacy groups, and even domestic violence shelters. These organizations accused her of trivializing the very subject matter the film was supposed to treat with care. Public statements were released condemning the film's portrayal of abuse, suggesting it romanticized harmful dynamics rather than challenging them. Despite Colleen Hoover being the original author of the book, most of the backlash landed squarely on Blake. As both the film's lead actress and co-producer, she became the public face of a project many believed failed to honor its heavy themes responsibly. What's equally important is how swiftly the press turned on Justin Baldoni. Tabloid stories began painting him as a domineering director who suppressed Blake's creative vision. Accusations of sexism and emotional manipulation surfaced, though few were backed by hard evidence. These negative portrayals emerged before Melissa Nathan was hired by Baldoni's team, clearly indicating the backlash wasn't crafted by him, it already existed. His camp didn't plant rumors. They inherited a mess already spinning out of control. Still, when Justin did respond, he remained calm and respectful. He acknowledged Blake's contributions, praised her influence on the final product, and refused to publicly engage in personal attacks. Even more damning were reports from anonymous crew members who described Blake as often withdrawn, spending much of her time alone in her trailer and being hard to approach. Yet despite these behind-the-scenes whispers, there's still no evidence that Justin's team initiated any smear campaign. No leaked stories. No targeted attacks. No signs of malice. Instead, Blake's team, most notably her publicist, Leslie Sloan, was reportedly running interference, feeding negative narratives about Justin to high-profile outlets. And when he finally tried to set the record straight, it was framed as retaliation. Though no formal sexual harassment complaint had even been filed at that point. This raises an essential question. What is Blake Lively claiming retaliation for? The backlash she received from fans. The creative disagreements she had with Baldoni. None of this fits the legal definition of retaliation. Criticism isn't retaliation, it's a consequence of public engagement, especially when one chooses to promote a sensitive story while making tone-deaf remarks or marketing branded alcohol alongside it. The takeover of the once neutral subreddit It ends with lawsuits allegedly replacing original moderators with team-aligned voices only deepens suspicions. Today, any comment that questions the dominant narrative is shut down, dismissed as misogyny or hate. But that isn't advocacy. That isn't protecting women. That's manufacturing a narrative and weaponizing social discourse to silence dissent. And in the end, that kind of control isn't justice, it's manipulation.